Inflation Explained: Why Your Money Loses Value. Imagine I give you £100 today. You put it inside a box. You lock the box. And you don't touch it for 20 years. 20 years later, you open the box. How much money is inside? £100. So you haven't lost any money, right? Well, not necessarily. Because the important question isn't only, how many pounds do I have? It's also, what can those pounds actually buy? If £100 buys you 10 bags of shopping today, but only 6 bags of shopping 20 years from now, you still have £100, but your money has become less powerful. And that is one of the most important things to understand about money and investing. It's called inflation. Welcome to episode 4 of Investing Explained Simply. Today we're looking at inflation, why your money loses value. What is inflation? Inflation simply means that the general level of prices is increasing over time. Imagine a shopping basket. Inside it we have bread, milk, petrol, clothes, electricity, train tickets, restaurant meals, haircuts, and lots of other things that households regularly spend money on. Now, imagine that this whole basket cost £100 this year. Next year, the same basket costs £103. The cost has increased by £3. That means prices across that example basket have risen by around 3%. That is inflation. The UK's Office for National Statistics actually uses a similar idea when measuring consumer inflation, a very large basket representing goods and services bought by households. Inflation does not mean everything goes up by the same amount. This is important. If inflation is 3%, it does not mean that every single thing in the country becomes exactly 3% more expensive. Bread might increase by 5%. Televisions might fall in price. Petrol might rise by 10%. The price of a haircut might barely change. Some things become more expensive faster than others. Some things can actually become cheaper. Inflation is trying to capture the overall change in prices across a broad collection of goods and services. So when you hear, inflation is 3%, think, the general price level is about 3% higher than it was a year earlier. The shrinking £100 note. Let's imagine our £100 again. Suppose prices increased by exactly 3% every year. Today, something costs £100. After 1 year, roughly £103. After 10 years, that same collection of things would cost roughly £134. After 20 years, roughly £181. So, something that costs £100 today could cost around £181 in 20 years if prices rose by a constant 3% every year. Your £100 note hasn't changed, but what it can buy has. Think of your £100 as a shopping trolley. Today, it fills the whole trolley. A few years later, the trolley is 3/4 full. Eventually, perhaps only half full. The money looks identical. Its purchasing power isn't. The Bank of England describes this directly. Inflation means money buys less than it did previously. Inflation compounds too. Remember our last episode about compound interest? Well, inflation can compound as well. Imagine prices rise by 5% this year. Something costing £100 becomes £105. Then, prices rise by another 5%. It's not 5% of the original £100 anymore, it's 5% of £105. So the new price becomes £110.25. Then, inflation gets applied again. This is why even relatively small annual rates can make a surprisingly large difference over decades. It's another snowball, but this time, the snowball is rolling against your purchasing power. Why does inflation happen? There isn't one single cause of inflation. Prices can increase for several reasons. Let's imagine a very simple pizza restaurant. Joe's Pizza sells pizzas for £10. Suddenly, the price of cheese increases. Electricity becomes more expensive. Staff wages increase. Fuel costs rise. Now, each pizza costs more to produce. The restaurant might respond by increasing the price from £10 to £11. That's one route to inflation. Businesses face higher costs and pass some of those costs on to customers. But there's another possibility. Imagine Joe's Pizza can make 100 pizzas tonight, but suddenly 200 people want one. There are more customers chasing the same number of pizzas. Joe might realize that people are willing to pay more, so the price increases. Inflation can therefore reflect changes in costs, demand, wages, energy prices, supply disruptions, and other forces across the economy. The IMF describes inflation broadly as the rate at which prices increase over a period of time. Supply and demand. Imagine a children's birthday party. There are 20 children and only 10 cupcakes. Suddenly, those cupcakes become quite valuable. Now imagine there are 20 children and 200 cupcakes. Nobody is fighting over cupcakes anymore. This is a very simplified version of supply and demand. When lots of money and demand are competing for limited goods and services, prices can come under upward pressure. But inflation can also result when the supply side gets damaged. Maybe an energy shortage makes manufacturing more expensive. Maybe bad weather damages crops. Maybe a war disrupts fuel supplies. Maybe factories close. Now there are fewer goods available, or they cost more to produce. Again, prices can rise. Is inflation always bad? You might now be thinking, why don't we simply have zero inflation? Interestingly, policymakers generally don't aim for zero. In the UK, the government currently gives the Bank of England a 2% inflation target over the medium term. The bank explains that this is intended to keep price rises low and stable while avoiding the problems associated with prices continually falling. Why might falling prices be a problem? Imagine you want to buy a car for £20,000, but you believe that next year it will cost £18,000. You might wait. Businesses might delay investment too. If everybody continually delays spending because they expect prices to fall further, economic activity can weaken. So the aim isn't necessarily no price changes whatsoever. The aim is generally low and relatively stable inflation. Inflation versus deflation. Inflation, prices generally rise. Deflation, prices generally fall. At first, deflation sounds brilliant. Everything becomes cheaper. But imagine you're a business. You sell a product for £100 today. Next year, customers expect it to cost £90. So they wait. Your sales fall. You reduce production. Perhaps you need fewer workers. People lose income. They spend less. Businesses sell even less. So continually falling prices can create their own economic problems. This helps explain why central banks tend to prefer low, stable, positive inflation rather than persistent deflation. What does inflation do to savings? Now let's connect this to your money. Imagine you have £10,000 in cash, and your cash earns 0% interest. Inflation is 3%. After 1 year, your bank account still says £10,000. You haven't lost a pound. But the average prices of things you buy have increased. So in real terms, the purchasing power of that £10,000 has fallen. This is why holding cash is not completely risk-free. You might avoid stock market volatility, but you're still exposed to inflation risk. The FCA specifically warns that cash savings can lose buying power over time because of inflation. Nominal return versus real return. This gives us a really important investing concept. Imagine your investment grows by 5%. Brilliant. You've made 5%. But suppose inflation was 3%. Your purchasing power hasn't really increased by the full 5%. A rough way to think about it is 5% investment return minus 3% inflation equals around 2% real growth. The 5% is your nominal return. That's what happened to the number of pounds. The amount left after accounting for inflation is your real return. And real return is often what really matters. Because ultimately, you don't invest because you want a bigger number displayed on a screen. You invest because you hope that money will allow you to buy more goods, services, or opportunities in the future. Imagine two people meet, Sarah and David. They each have £10,000. Sarah keeps hers in cash, earning nothing. David invests his. Over 10 years, imagine David's investment grows, but his investment also moves up and down. Some years are good, some are bad. Sarah looks at David and says, "Your money is risky, mine isn't moving at all." And she's partly correct. David has investment risk, but Sarah has another type of risk, purchasing power risk. If inflation continually increases prices while her £10,000 remains unchanged, she can buy less and less. So the choice isn't always risk versus no risk. Sometimes it's one type of risk versus another type of risk. Does that mean you should invest all your cash? No, and this is very important. Cash has advantages. You can access it easily. Its value doesn't normally move around like shares do. Money that you need soon, perhaps for bills, emergencies, or a short-term purchase, may have a very different purpose from money you're investing for decades. Investing also introduces the possibility of losses. An investment can fall by 10%, 20%, 30%, or much more. There is no guarantee that investing will beat inflation, particularly over short periods. The FCA emphasizes that investment values can fall and that decisions should reflect your goals, circumstances, and time frame. So inflation isn't an argument for recklessly investing everything you own. It's an argument for understanding that cash itself has trade-offs. What about your salary? Inflation doesn't only affect savings, it affects income too. Imagine you earn £30,000 a year. Next year, you're still earning £30,000. You might think, my salary hasn't fallen. But if everything you buy has become more expensive, your effective standard of living may have fallen. You need more money to buy the same things. That's why workers often care about whether wage increases keep pace with inflation. If your salary rises 2%, but prices rise 5%, your nominal salary increased, but your real purchasing power may have fallen. Again, the number isn't the whole story. Inflation is personal. Here's another interesting point. The official inflation rate is an average, but your personal inflation rate might feel very different. Imagine person A spends lots of their income on energy, food, rent, and petrol. Person B spends more on electronics, streaming services, and other products whose prices aren't rising as quickly. Even though they live in the same country, inflation might affect their lives differently. The ONS basket is designed to represent household spending overall, but different households naturally have different spending patterns. So when someone says, inflation is only 3%, my bills have gone up much more than that, they could be completely right about their own household. What happens when inflation gets too high? Imagine our pizza restaurant again. The price changes, £10, then £11, then £13, then £15, then £18. Now customers and businesses find it much harder to plan. How much should employees ask to be paid? How much should businesses charge? How much will materials cost next year? How much money should someone save for a future purchase? High and unpredictable inflation creates uncertainty. One of the Bank of England's main jobs is therefore to use monetary policy to try to keep inflation low and stable around the government's target. How do interest rates affect inflation? One of the Bank of England's main tools is the bank rate. Very simply, when interest rates rise, borrowing becomes more expensive. Mortgages can become more expensive. Business loans can become more expensive. Saving can become more attractive. People and businesses may spend less. Lower demand can help reduce pressure on prices. When inflationary pressure is lower, interest rates may eventually be reduced. In reality, the economy is much more complicated, and interest rate changes take time to work through the system, but that's the basic mechanism. We'll cover interest rates properly in another episode. The invisible tax on your money. Here's perhaps the simplest way to remember inflation. Imagine a tiny invisible creature. Every year it takes a bite out of what your money can buy. It doesn't necessarily remove pounds from your bank account. Instead, it removes purchasing power. At 2%, the bite might look tiny. At 5%, it becomes more noticeable. At 10%, it's much harder to ignore. And because inflation compounds over time, even small bites can become significant over decades. Let's return to our 100 pounds. At the beginning of this video, we placed 100 pounds into a box. 20 years later, the note is still there. It hasn't faded away. It still says 100 pounds. But the world around it has changed. Food costs more, services cost more, transport may cost more, housing may cost more, and the amount that 100 pounds can buy may have fallen substantially. That's inflation. So there are really two ways your money can change. The number of pounds can change, and the value of what those pounds can buy can change. Good financial decisions need to consider both. So, what have we learned? Inflation is the general increase in prices over time. As prices rise, each pound buys less. That means money can lose purchasing power even when the number displayed in your bank account stays exactly the same. Inflation also compounds. A small annual increase in prices can become a large increase when repeated over many years. Inflation doesn't affect every product or every household equally. Cash can protect you from some kinds of investment risk, while leaving you exposed to inflation risk. And when thinking about investments, we shouldn't only look at the return we make. We should ask, what is my return after inflation? Because the goal isn't merely to have more pounds, it's to maintain and ideally increase what those pounds can actually do for you. But this raises another really important question. We've now talked about saving, investing, risk, compounding, and inflation. So, when should you actually save your money, and when might you consider investing it? That's exactly what we'll look at in Episode 5, Saving versus Investing. What's the difference, and when should you do each?